Texas 31, Michigan 12. And I was there right on the sideline to witness it all as the whole new Saturday tour rolled into Ann Arbor. Now, I've never had a bad time in Michigan, and those folks treat us great, but I've been up there and seen them win. This is the first time I've ever seen them lose in person in the Big House. This game, on the 1-5 Chalai rating, gets a solid 2.5, because although it was really kind of a splattering if you think about it. It was entertaining. So I'll give it 2 out of 5, 2.5 out of 5. I think it's, oh boy, I think a huge misconception. I think a pair of big misconceptions got exposed in this game, and we hinted at it last week because I'd had a fair amount of feedback from some folks about this game. Huge misconception that just got put on full display for all to see is that Texas is this finesse and fireworks team, and Michigan's the bully. Michigan's the one that'll sledgehammer you. And I told you, what could be the turning point here, what could be the thing that rattles you the most is, what if Texas actually wants the kind of game you think Michigan wants? What if Texas is ready for a fight, in other words? Friends, Texas was ready for the fight. Texas got the game they wanted. Texas wanted this all week. Texas, I can confidently tell you from people inside that program, were very confident. Okay, Texas was extremely confident in the mismatches they thought they had out wide. Texas was extremely confident that they had the quarterback edge, obviously. But Texas, although Sark said in the postgame they weren't really out to do it and Texas didn't really send the message, Texas was absolutely out to send a message, and they were out to prove something. Nothing they did today was a surprise to them. And it was so funny kind of knowing what they have out in Austin and thinking that I knew the rebuild of sorts that was in order in Ann Arbor, to listen to people talk about this, to look at the late line movement in favor of Michigan, and to listen to people talk about how it was a little cold, it was a little windy. It's just classic weather for a Big Ten bully ball type fight. And I'm like, the road team's bigger, and the road team's faster, and the road team's stronger, and they're 7 deep at wide receiver. They got 3 quarterbacks on their roster that they traveled with better than anything you're going to trot out there. Who's about to bully who? What are we talking about here? I wish you guys could stand there, by the way. And this is no shot at Michigan. Texas is just a machine. I wish you could stand there and look at how big they are. They look just like Georgia. They look just like Bama has in years past, and they don't sacrifice speed for it. You could load up your team with a whole bunch of fat guys. You could do that, and you could go 3-9. Texas has got the biggest players. They may have, Jesse, we need to check this when we get to playoff time, because they'll be there. We need to check the size comparison in the rosters and head-to-heads. Texas is huge, but they're really fast. And so you look at it, and if I were to have just exposed you to the talking points around the game all week, and then I would have had you stand on the sideline and had you watch warm-ups and had you stand in that tunnel that they both share and watch them stand next to each other, you would have looked at me and you would have said, the team wearing the darks is going to bully the team wearing the white? Well, that doesn't look like it's going to happen. It was never going to happen. You may simulate the game 10 times out of 10 and get some random result where Michigan wins. You will get no result where Michigan is the physically superior team to that crew. You probably won't get many results with Texas versus anyone this year, where Texas is physically inferior to any team. And I know who they have to play in conference play. And I know who they'll probably have to go through to win the SEC. And certainly if you go to the playoff and all that's well down the road, I'm not saying Texas is invincible. They're certainly not. They could lose a game. But I don't believe, and this is the first time we've said this in a long time, I don't believe if Texas loses a game, it'll be because someone physically whipped them. You may out-execute them. You may force turnovers. You may execute at a high level yourself. You may just flat out have really good football players. But in the past, you and I both know, even in Big 12 play, there have been some times on Sundays where we've looked and we've said, boy, Texas, they outclassed them talent-wise, but they kind of got whipped a little bit. Not happening this year. I don't think that's happening this year. The first half was a live bet special. I mean, well, first off, I'm on the moon on Saturdays. I'm at a game, so I can't pay attention to any other game. And I'm certainly not on my phone. But number one, because they have really, really good reception in Michigan Stadium. And number two, because I was witnessing it in person. It was pretty obvious what was about to happen. And I'm talking about on Texas's opening drive, where they go down and they don't even score. Everything that your eyes needed to see, your eyes saw, to me, just line of scrimmage wise, your eyes really saw. It was so obvious, 10, 8, 6 minutes to go in the first quarter. And so let me just paper pop you here and hit you with some padlocks. Texas 24-3 outscores Michigan in they scored on 4 of their first 5 drives, and that was after they go down on the first one and miss a field goal. So at the end of the first half, it's over, and it was over well before that. 24-3 is your halftime score. 279-88 is your first half total edge for Texas. 15-4, they won the first down battle. Texas was 8 of 10 on third downs. Michigan was 1 of 5. And here is, I may go 1, 2, 3, triple padlock special, which just means if I tell you this stat on Friday, you need not even watch the game. Texas runs 45 plays in the first half. 36 of the 45 were in Michigan territory. Remember, I told you last year, Michigan wins the national title. 95% of the snaps in that season were taken with the lead. Michigan had the lead for 95% of their snaps last year. That was not the case at all yesterday, and it's a team that has to play with the lead, obviously. So I'm going to get to Michigan in just a second, but let me tell you something. I don't know how emphatic you felt like this was. I don't know if you felt like it was a sign of things to come or if you took a message away from it, because there can be a lot of hyperbole sometimes that surrounds these sorts of games, and I don't want to be a prisoner of that, but I cannot help but tell you, having been able to do this for a little while, like I've been blessed to be able to do, I've traveled with Alabama a fair amount during Saban's run and during the pinnacle of it. Traveled around Georgia and Kirby a fair amount. Been around Ohio State and Ryan Day a fair amount. I'm just listing the best rosters and best programs in the country. Texas, in a one-game sample size, because that's all I've gotten from them this year. If you were to just be around them yesterday, they look identical to those programs. And I'm talking about the way they carry themselves. I'm talking about how loose, how aggressive, how nasty they are, how physically imposing they are. Everything about their size and the depth of size, it mirrors those teams, which is not a guarantee of anything, except that they've put themselves in position to have an opportunity to do what those teams have done. Do you remember when Sark got hired there? And I remember on this show, Colin, when he first got hired there, we were watching the press conference, and of course then we had just a litany, just like a flood of comments about how Sark's already a failed head coach, and he hasn't. Well, no, you didn't say he hasn't. You said he can't. I said he hasn't. And that's where we first popularized the notion that Meemaw once made famous, and that is just because a man hasn't does not mean he cannot. And Sark hadn't ever put together a program that's operating like this. It never meant he couldn't. It never meant that. So now he has. Will it fall apart next year? I don't know. I would highly doubt it. But right now, they're able to compete with anyone. They are recruiting and acquiring talent with anyone. I think probably overlooked in all of this is you may not have the respect you should have for their evaluation process. Development is obviously happening because you look at the product on the field and you can't look like that and be poor in development. But evaluation, don't overlook how many of these portal guys they're hitting on and are immediate contributors. And then look elsewhere in the country at some programs that are going all in on the portal, and it falls apart immediately. It's like trying to nail Jell-O to the wall. Well, that is not an exact science, but there is a way you give yourself a decided edge there, and that is if you have a really, really good edge that you've built for yourself in your evaluation, and you make sure that the guys you're taking are being taken through some of the same methodology that you take high school kids with in traditional recruiting. Now, you cannot portal like you recruit. You cannot apply an apples-to-apples schematic through both methods because one is a very, very quick process. The other one is a multi-year process. But you can eval guys and you can sell Texas. You can sell Texas. There's money involved. No one's ever saying there's not. But there are a lot of folks out there spending a lot of money on their roster and sucking. So Texas is not. So they're understanding how to do this thing. And it's built through high school, and never make any mistake about that. But the eval portion of this entire thing, you think Sark being at Alabama didn't benefit from seeing that? And having been around Saban's way of doing it, he'll be the first to tell you that. He's effusive in his praise, number one, because he got a second chance through the guy, but number two, because he got to observe that part of the machine. So Texas obviously is going to be a player in this thing. At least I'm not being made fun of for picking them to win the SEC anymore. At least people now take them as a legitimate contender. Why people didn't to begin with is beyond me. I guess you got to see it to believe it. Michigan. Reality kind of set in for some Michigan folks yesterday. Now, I will give a frequently mentioned Michigan buddy of mine on this program credit. That's as specific as I'd like to be. He did caution me. Probably don't want to go to this game. Probably going to be ugly. You probably should go to Iowa City instead. And he was right. He was right. But I went anyway. Because how do you turn down Texas, Michigan? This is not a reload situation. This is a rebuild situation. Not from the ground up, but a lot of talk in the abstract has been about the whole Connor Stallions thing. That's not the meat and potatoes of the situation at Michigan. The situation, which should have been beaten to death, I don't know how it hasn't been, it's been mentioned, is the loss of talent on the field, the loss of talent on the coaching staff, which doesn't mean there's not talent in either of those compartments. It's just it's greatly reduced. I'm also a believer that if you kept the exact same coaching staff in place, but you had the roster churn, you'd have this situation. I mean, what would they be doing any differently at quarterback right now if Jim Harbaugh were still here? Congrats on your win today, by the way. If he were still here, would he have performed magic with Davis Warren or Alex Orji? I don't think so. Maybe they would have portaled in a guy. I don't know, but they didn't because he's not there. So they have to play with the lead, and they didn't yesterday, and it cost them. The reality here is this is going to be a year where you learn a lot. I think Sharon Moore, I don't know what he expected yesterday to be like. It didn't go their way. Whether they knew it was coming or not, it didn't go their way. But what he will find out here as a head coach on a permanent basis is he'll find out a lot about the folks in the building. And if they get this thing figured out, the ones that are going to be around this year, not that they're going to go 5-7 or anything like that, but the ones that are around this year, you will always hold them close. Because if it ever rights itself, and 3 years down the road, you're right back competing for titles, the ones that go through what you're about to be going through this year, those will be the ones. Not the ones that you hire down the road. The ones that everyone's going to want to come to Michigan then if you get it turned around. But in the meantime, watching that quarterback situation is tough. And if you wanted to tell me, Josh, I don't know how much I learned about Texas because, frankly, I think a lot of teams could have gone in there and shut down that Michigan offense. That's fine. That's fine. That's why I'm not. I told Colin. Colin put the burnt orange and white confetti up in the ceiling. I said, let's hold off on it this week. I know our prediction looks good. Let's hold off on it this week. I don't think I'm going above and beyond here. Texas is a unit, and they're going to figure into the national championship picture. Michigan is not, but Michigan's got Arkansas State coming to town. And then in 2 weeks, one of the most interesting games of the year is USC at Michigan, which, remember, kids, is a conference game now. This is college football. Every year we see something happen where a team that looked totally lost in the wilderness in the first few weeks of the season gets it figured out. I don't think that'll be Michigan. I also don't think that they'll face many wide receiver cores that can stretch them and expose the different options behind Will Johnson in their secondary like Texas can. So, defensively, they will keep themselves in every game. Like I said, it's not falling off a cliff for them. But got to play with a lead. We're not able to do it yesterday. So Texas, I thought, made a big statement. Sark afterwards said, I don't know if we're sending a message necessarily. He lied to you. They sent a message, loud and clear. It's one that he should be proud that they sent.